Hey you, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in this video we are going to be making a crossfox. And if you're like, oh, what is a crossfox? I will post some pictures here. It is actually my favorite color variation of a red fox. I just think they're very pretty and I wanted to make one. As you can see here, I am doing some resin casting, but if you're one of the people that are like, I want to see you sculpt, well, you're in luck, because this piece is actually one I did a few years ago that I filmed. It's my Red Fox video, so if you guys been wanting to see sculpting for this piece in particular, you would go to that video, which I will leave in the description down below for you guys. But yeah, I'm making a resin copy because I thought about going realistic, but then I was like, but it could be like really cutesy and like I can cuddle it. So, you know, that's the road I went down, obviously. Plus it's a nice break from Cerberus when he was just the creepy creep vibes. Now it's going to go for the cutesy cutes vibes. So that's what we're doing here. And if you're wondering what resin casting is, essentially it's just mixing two parts of a liquid resin together, and then you pour it into a silicone mold, and it as a chemical reaction, and it becomes very, very hard and tough, and it just makes a perfect copy of, say, a sculpture you made a few years ago. But when you're resin casting, you want to always make sure you're wearing protection and you're wearing a mask, because the vapors can be toxic. It can give you a rash. You can end up having allergic reactions to it and you not be able to use it anymore. So it's just better to be safe rather than sorry, and wear your gloves and protection. I want you guys to be safe, all right? All right. Now, with the bat video, I'm kind of having a similar process to where I am making my armature based off a pattern I have drawn up. Normally, I don't film this part because I usually find a picture online of a skeleton and then I trace it on like the actual like computer screen or TV screen. So I don't film it because it's hard to get an angle to film that, but that's essentially what I do. But in this case, I have a pre-drawn pattern out that I use for when I'm sewing them, and so I just have marked out where wires will go, and I'm just tracing that with ball and sockets and wire. And a lot of you guys have been asking where I get my ball and sockets, so I left some links in the description of where you can get them. They're really good for like necks, spines, and tails because they don't break and they have a very fluid motion, but they're not really great for legs because they can't bend at a 90-degree angle, so they couldn't get things like elbows or ankles or things like that. So for that, I still recommend using wire. Overall, this is kind of more of like a process video rather than a tutorial, because I already have everything like pre-planned and pre-drawn out, because this is what I consider one of my go-to series. So I've streamlined it for like business purposes so that I can make them very efficiently and quickly. So it's not really like, well, I'm going to start to finish from like sculpting it to figuring out armature to figuring out the body and stuff like that. But in this case, I already have all that figured out, so it's just more of a process video, especially when it's sewing. Like, I'm going to be machine sewing for most of this, so you know, if you want like my go for it method of simpler sewing, because you don't have a machine to sew with, or you know, patterns are like the bane of your existence like mine. I only do it for like a few pieces because your girl says every time me and the sewing machine don't get along very well. But I have tons of other videos that show the simpler method of sewing. So this is just me showing you guys a little bit more in-depth look at stuff I make that are resin casted and I make on a regular basis to sell. So, you know, there's a little bit of inside look for you guys. But as you just saw, I was looking at photos, trying to sketch out where I want to cut all the fabric pieces and which color should be what and where it should go. And now I am just tracing it out on the actual fabric. And I want to make sure I'm laying it in the direction I want the fur to go, because I actually did it like twice trying to cut these out. It would suck if I flipped it the other way and I had the fur going the wrong direction, because it's just not going to look realistic, or it's just going to look very funny. So that's something to keep in mind. And when you're drawing out your patterns, you want to make sure when you're ready to cut them out, cut a little bit away from them, because you want a seam allowance. Because if you like stray a little bit from your line when you're sewing in your sewing machine, you're not like screwed, because you have a little bit of seam allowance there. So that actually helped a lot with this piece, because I'm still kind of winging it. You know, like I'm trying to pretend like I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. We're just out here trying to make it work, trying to sew with the sewing machines that we know we shouldn't be doing because we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to try it anyway because I'll be damned if I was going to hand sew all this. But I really wanted to use these furs. I have a bunch of furs that I never use, and I really wanted to use them, and I thought it would just be perfect, so here we are. Also, when I traced this particular piece out, I totally thought it looked like a dog, like a weird dog, so I totally drew like a little smiley, like ears and nose and stuff. So whoever buys this, one of the one of the inner pieces looks like a weird dog. The little inside. Once I have all my fabric pieces cut out, it's now time to start sewing, but before I get right into the sewing, I need to pin all the fabric pieces together. And so I'm starting from the very top to the very bottom. So I'm starting with the neck and moving my way all the way down to the butt and just pinning all the fabrics together and sewing as I go. And while I'm pinning all the fabrics together, I'd like to talk about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for curious and creative people, being insanely affordable at less than $10 a month with an annual subscription and featuring a wide selection of classes ranging from things like illustration, crafts, photography, business, and just tons more that I couldn't even cover in this. Since Skillshare has such a wide variety of classes, there is something for everyone regardless of your skill level, from beginner to advanced. Since I was doing a lot of machine sewing for this piece, I thought it'd be a good idea to take a crash course on sewing, and Miranda's class was perfect thing I needed to get a nice refresher. So if you're interested, the first 1,000 people who click the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare. And thank you once again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And once everything is pinned in place, it's now time to machine sew everything. And I'm just making sure I'm going nice and slow, removing the pins as I go, because I know y'all came for me a little bit in one of my last videos that I didn't remove the pin. So I'm making sure I do it this time. I'm doing it. And I'm just making sure I'm following the lines nice and closely, just to make sure that, you know, I don't stray too far away, even outside of my seam allowance. But I also want to make sure that I even go over like all the lines with my pencil again, just to make sure they're nice and bright, especially over really dark faux fur. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm just making sure I'm trying to make it as bright as possible, make it as easy as possible, because for me the margin of error is high. For other people maybe not, but for me it's high. While I'm pinning and sewing everything, I'd like to do my little segment of show other people's art because I'm so proud of them. So in case you guys don't know, I have a hashtag called KP Tutorials, and if you guys use my tutorials at all or just use any of my work as inspiration for your own pieces, please use that hashtag so I can see it, because I would love to share your guys' work. And so I want to share these two pieces with you guys, and I think they just turned out amazing, especially the UV reactive fur of this Umbreon. Like, come on, I wouldn't even have thought of that. So that's a really cool idea there, and I really like it. So if you guys have any pieces that you'd like to share, just use that hashtag and so that I can find it. And that is a perfect segue once again. That is your daily reminder that I believe in you and you can do anything you put your mind to. If you have been thinking about an art project that you've been wanting to do, but you've been putting it off because you're just like, nope, can't do that. I'm not good enough, or I don't have the materials to do this. I don't have this and this and this and this and that. Hey, no. You stop that right now and you go do that thing that you've been wanting to do, because I believe in you and I will encourage you, and I will be that positive vibe that you need if you need it. So, you know, if you need to vent in the comments, you vent in the comments about whatever you're going through. If you just need a break, like, I got you, all right? I believe in you. You got this, okay? Okay. Can I also just, like, toot my horn a little bit? Because I am so proud of the fact that I didn't screw this up as badly as I thought I would. Sewing with a sewing machine is just, it's so difficult for me to understand, because I'm just like, well, what pattern goes where, and how do I sew this together, but what if I sew it in the wrong it's just, I'm just like, this is why I keep putting it off, because I'm like, I can't do that, I don't even understand. But hey, I'm taking my own advice, I did the thing, and it turned out cool, and I really like this one. So, you know, there's just a testament to, you hit yourself in the head, tell those voices that are like, no, you can't do that. Shut up. You can. I did. Look it. I'm pinning stuff. I'm sewing things. Go do the thing.
Don't be afraid, won't let you fall, girl. Don't be afraid, won't let you fall, girl.
If you're thinking currently, didn't we just do resin casting at the beginning of this video? Well, yes, we did, but now I need to resin cast the feet. And the reason I didn't do it at the beginning is because I knew I was going to need to push the armature through the finished sewn body, and it would just be a little bit more difficult if I did it with the feet intact, because I can't see what I'm doing first of all, so it's kind of a guessing game. And then bulky feet through the sewn body would just be a lot more difficult and not worth the extra pain and suffering. So I'm just doing the resin casting afterwards to make my life a little bit easier. And once all the resin casting is now done, it is time to stuff the body, and for that I'm using polyfill. Polyfill is basically just the shredded up version of quilt batting. So if you have quilt batting, you don't really need to go out and buy polyfill unless you really want to. You can just shred the quilt batting and then it'll act the exact same. But what I'm doing is just making sure I am stuffing as evenly as I possibly can. So I do a little stuffing in the front, then do it in the back, then flip it over to make sure the other side has the same exact amount, just to make sure there's not any divots or anything where stuffing didn't quite get, or I'm overstuffing in one spot but not the other. I'm just trying to make it as even as I can possibly get it. And here you can see it's all nice and pudgy. Here I am poking it. But yeah, it's just the tool. I almost forgot the tool that I use for the bats. I also use for the tail in this one. You guys gave me two answers. It was either called hemostats or forceps, and it could honestly just be both. Like, it's just the same tool but different names for them. But I'm using that to get to the very tip of the tail in this case. And so if you have very tight spots that you can't really like push a finger into to get to stuffing it correctly, use that tool because it just makes your life easier. Again, if you're actually going to do all this. If you're not, then just, hey, just enjoy the footage. You'll notice here that I'm adding glue and gluing the very ends of the leg fabric to the resin casted foot, and I'm doing that just because the legs are unsewn, just so it made it easier to turn inside out, and so now I need to sew them, but I don't want to cinch the fabric when I'm sewing and make it so that they're not going to meet the resin foot anymore once I'm done sewing. So I just glue them to the foot first, just to make sure they're nice and secure and that they're not going to move too much while I'm sewing, and just to make sure it stays the length that I wanted it to when I made the pattern. So that's another tip to use if you're going to do this. If not, you know, once again, just enjoy the footage. Hey, how's it going? Once all the sewing is done, it is now time to trim up the body. And I'm not doing too much trimming, it's mostly for the black fur. I thought it was a little bit too long, and for that I am using a pet shaver. And I love this tool. If you are going to be making art dolls and you're going to be making plenty of them, I highly suggest getting one of these because it just takes the bulk fur off very quickly and very evenly. And it comes with a bunch of different guards that you can use. As you can see right here, I'm using different guards for the different types of length you want for your fur. Like for instance, the belly fur I wanted a little bit longer. I kind of wanted to match the rest of the body, but the legs I want them to be a lot shorter fur so I can get those nice angles of elbow, ankle, etc. So I'm using a shorter guard for that. But please note, as you can see here, you do not need a pet shaver to trim these. You can go at it with scissors, and you're still going to have to go at it with scissors just to make sure you get everything nice and even and how you want it to be. Like for instance, I always have to go back for the legs because it can't get those sharp edges that I want with the pet shaver, so I always go back with scissors just to make sure I get those angles that I want really nice and crisp. So you don't need a pet shaver, but if you can afford one and you're going to do a lot, I recommend them. I do. I'm also trimming up the ears. I know I forgot to film me sewing them, but here are my fluffy little triangles for ears, and I'm just making sure that I'm using the trimmer to really shape them out so that they actually look like ears and not just fluffy triangles, even though, I mean, I guess technically speaking, ears are fluffy triangles, but you know what I mean. You know, I'm just giving them a nice shape to them, and so pet shavers really help. In case I didn't make that clear enough, pet shavers help. Yeah. I don't do too much painting with this piece because I'm mostly going to fur the entire head, but I do want to do a base coat of black. Since most of this piece is going to be black with the head, I want to make sure that if I like miss a spot when I'm furring it, it's not going to be like a harsh white. It'll blend it a little bit better with a black background. If you guys want to see me furring faces and stuff like that, I have that stuff on my Patreon. If anyone is interested, I will leave it in the description down below. And once I have furred everything, it is time for airbrushing, and I am using a dual action gravity feed airbrush, which is just really fancy talk for an airbrush you put paint in from the top. So I'm just using it to blend in all the furs together, and like in this case, I really wanted a bright, vibrant pop of color on the face, so I used white first. So now I'm just making sure that I blend that in with the colors that a cross fox is supposed to be. And I'm also using it to blend in the furs of the body, so it's not such a harsh edge between each transition of fur. And so the airbrush really helped just to do little tweaks here and there. I wasn't doing too much airbrushing with this, it's mostly just all the furs, but just to do nice little tweaks and stuff, like to bring the black in for the ears a little bit more so that it just blended it a little bit better, things like that. And the last step is to paint the eyes and the little toe beans. And so here I'm painting the little toe beans I wanted a very muted pink for them. And for the eyes, I wanted to do a bright green, but I'm starting really like with a darker green, and I'm just sketching out where I want the irises to go. And then I gradually go lighter and lighter and lighter until it just has a nice gradient effect. And I tend to use like a metallic paint for my lightest, so that when I go and gloss it over, which I'm doing currently, it just really brings a nice pop of color, and I like the way it looks. But once everything is nice and varnished, this little one is complete. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and making it to the end. I appreciate it. I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreons. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. And I will see you guys in the next video. Which, you know, actually, I'm taking requests. So if you guys like want something, you've been wanting to see something for a while, you know, let me down in the comments and we'll see if I can make it happen. All right, bye guys.